Shabbat Shalom. How are you? Good. Ugh. Stephen sent me, he said he missed my phone calls. It was actually Phone Tree that sent him 2 messages.
What's phone tree? Is it like
It's a mess. When we need to send a message out to everybody in the congregation, we use a software called Dial My Calls, and it sends whatever we record to everybody. But it uses the synagogue as the number it comes from, and I guess a lot of people put my name down with that number, so they think it's for me. It's actually Barbara just telling everybody about the Holocaust event on Tuesday, Israel Independence thing on Wednesday, and then my retirement dinner on the 25th of July. So tell them they're not from me.
okay, I will.
I think my name comes up in everybody's phone. And I have to,
Today's our graduation dinner.
graduation from what?
His students are graduating today, or they graduate today, or I don't know, something with graduation.
His students
His students.
for ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I have seen his face. And if not, I didn't introduce myself.
Hey, Bobby. How are you? Nice to see you. Oh, yeah. You just rejoined? Did you hear the one who called me last week? Yeah, that was, no, Barbara, our president, sent out a message to everybody. It comes up on everybody's phone as coming from me. So I got all these calls. What did you call for? I said, I didn't actually.
When I get your name, I always look to see whether it says work or local.
There you
If
go.
it's from work, I
If
think
it's work, it's from here. I don't remember. I was on the phone with somebody at the time, so I got disconnected. I apologize for that. So, Bobby, I heard you're gonna be a repeat MC.
Yeah, from your.
Because you did it for my installation. Do you remember that?
I sure do.
18 years ago?
I thought it was 17, was it 18?
Well, by then it'll be 17 and a half. I'm in my 18th year.
Okay, I got it.
So we can call it coffee
Yes.
if you like. This is Amanda, Harry.
Thank you,
Bob.
Bobby.
We'll start here in about 1 minute. Bobby Bright was at that installation.
What,
Mayor Bright was at that installation. He was Mayor of Montgomery back then.
yeah,
I was just trying to remember.
that was a while ago. You're right, I remember that.
It was, yeah,
He went to Congress after that.
he did for 1 term.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know what,
He sort of disappeared,
he
really.
really has disappeared, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Is his wife a judge?
His wife was a judge,
Okay.
Lynn Bright.
On that note, Shabbat Shalom, welcome to Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem Synagogue here in Montgomery, Alabama. I am Rabbi Scott Kramer, and welcome to our non-holiday Kabbalat Shabbat. We begin tonight's service on page 5 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We continue with Psalm 95, page 11. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, nekad mafana betoda. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, nekad mafana betoda. Naria, naria, l'tzur yishenu, bizmirot naria lo. We continue responsively. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us.
For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hand.
If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted, like the people at Merivah, like the time at Massah, in the desert when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way, so in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. Arbaim shanakut bedor va'omaram toeh levavim v'hem lo yadid rachai asher nishpati v'yapi im yevaun El menuchati, page 13. Ashiru ladonai shir chadash, shiru ladonai kol haaretz, shiru ladonai bachu shemo, basru meyom leom yeshuato, sapru vagoyim gevodo, bechol ha'amim lifliotov, Ki gadol Adonai, O mehulal miyod, no ra'u, Elko Elohim, lai lai lai, Kiko Elohe ha'amim elilim, V'Adonai shamayim masa, Hod ve'hadar lefanav, Oz ve'tiferet be'mikdasho, Havu l'Adonai mishpachot amim, Havu l'Adonai kavod v'oz, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Seu mincha levahu lechadzerot lai 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 shtachavu l'Adonai behadret kodesh chilu mipanav kol haaretz imrum vagoyim Adonai malach avtikom tevel balatimot yadinamim b'meisharim yismechu hashamayim v'tagil haaretz ayiram mayamu melo yalo sadai v'chol asher bo lai 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 az yiranenu kol hatziyar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek v'yamim b'emunato yalai lalai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai lai lai. We continue page 15. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine. Righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth. The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is deemed supreme bow before God. Zion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult as you, Adonai, pass judgment. You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine. Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful. Light is sown for the righteous and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine holy name. Or Zarula Tzadik Ul Yisrael Ev Simcha Simchu Tzadikim Badunai V'Hodu L'Zecher Kadeshom. Page 17, Psalm 98. Mizmor Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash Ki Niflot Asa Hoshia Lo Yemino Uzaroa Joadia Adonai Yeshuato Lena Goyim Gilad Sid Kato Zachar Chasto Ve'amunato Levei Yisrael Rau Cholav Se'aretz Et Yeshuat Eloheinu Horiu Ladonai Kol Haaretz Bitzchum Veranenu Vizameru Zamru Ladonai Bechinar V'kol Zimara Bechatzot Rod V'kol Shofar Horiu Lifnei Melech Adonai Yiram Mayam Umaloho Tevel V'yoshveva Neharot Yimcha Uchaf Yachad Harim Yiranenu Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishpot Haaretz Yishpot Tevel B'tzedek Ve'yamim Be'meisharim Yalai Lalai 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 Yalai Lalai 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 Yalai Lalai 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 Yalai la 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 ya la 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 yalai la 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 yalai la 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 ya la 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 la. We continue on page 19 with Psalm 99. Adonai reigns, nations tremble. The one enthroned amidst the cherubim makes the world quake. Adonai is great in Zion above all nations. They shall acknowledge your name, saying, Great, all-inspiring Holy One. A sovereign strength lies in love of justice, and you forge the paths of truth, judging Jacob righteously and justly. Exalt Adonai, our God. Bow down before God, the Holy One. Moses and Aaron among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name, called to you, and you answered them. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. You answered them, Adonai, our God. You were a forgiving God to them, even as you punished them for their transgressions. Exalt Adonai, our God, and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai, our God, is holy. Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lahar kadisho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We rise, page 21, Psalm 29. Mizmor leDavid, havu ladonai b'nei elim, havu ladonai kavod vos, havu ladonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu ladonai behadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, Ela kavod hirim Adonai amayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai be'adar, kol Adonai shover arazim, vayshaber Adonai et alzei halvanon, vayarkidem kemo egel, Livanon v'siryon kemo venreimim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholeo ayalot, Vayechesot yaharod, Uvehechalo kulo omer kavod, Adonai lamabul yashav, Yeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz li'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. You may be seated. We continue, page 23. Lecha dodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila, Lecha dodi lekrat Kala b'nei Shabbat nikabila, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu elam yuchad, Adonai echad u'shamahu echad, L'shemu tiferet v'litila, Lecha dodi lekrat Kala b'nei Shabbat nikabila, Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekora biracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, so maseh b'machshvat chila, lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikabila, mikdash melech ir melucha, Kumitzi mitocha hafecha ravlach chevet b'yemek habacha v'hu yachamo alaychem la lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabilam. We rise as we turn to the last stanza of Lecha Dodi at the bottom, page 25, and we face towards the west. Bawi v'shalom ateret pala, gam b'simcha uvetzala, tochem munei am segula, bawi chala lecha, dodi lekrat, kala b'nei Shabbat nikabila. You may be seated. And we continue with Psalm 92 on page 27. A psalm, the song of the day of Shabbat. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing to your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You gladden me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age, they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. Tzadik tamar yifrach ki erez balvanon yizke shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenovun beseva deshenim verananim yeyu lehagid Ki yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlatabo. Page 29, Psalm 93. Adonai is sovereign, robed in splendor, girded in strength. The earth stands firm, not to be dislodged. From earliest time you are enthroned. You are eternal. The rivers rise up, Adonai. The rivers raise up their roar. The rivers raise up their waves above the roar of the vast sea and the majestic breakers of the ocean. Adonai stands supreme in the heavens. In your house, beautiful in its holiness, your testimonies endure, Adonai, for all time. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I'm so glad you have taken the time to join us both in person and online. Excuse me. So I don't fall asleep while I'm up here and fall asleep in my own sermon. So we are currently reading the middle of the book of Leviticus, which happens to be the middle book of the 5 books of Moses. When I mentioned this, I immediately remember a class that I took in rabbinical school, taught by the unbelievably incredible Dr. Rabbi David Lieber, Zichrona Livracha. If you open up your Etz Ahayem Chumash, he is the editor of that book. And he was one of my teachers. He was the first president of the University of Judaism in Bel Air, California, and one of the brightest teachers I ever had. He taught a class in Psalms. And that is a very, very difficult book to understand. His teaching style was, I would say, interesting. He had each of us read a line of a psalm in Hebrew, and then we had to decode it. We had to decode the line by detailing all the verbs and their conjugations and tense, and then attempt a translation of this particular verse. And of course, most of us were clueless and mistranslated. Then Rabbi Lieber would open his notebook, and his notebook was huge. And it was very old. And it was notes that he had taken on the book of Psalms, and gave us the true translation, according to him, along with all the commentary he had collected over his 60 years of research. I was in all of his teaching, but frightened out of my wits when it was my turn to read and translate. I will tell you that the younger students in the class did not like his teaching style, where he read every piece of commentary. Those of us that were a little older, we hung on to every word that he said. When we were finished translating a psalm, he would ask us to explain the psalm in broad terms and figure out its essence or purpose. Rabbi Lieber told us that psalms were written in, they always use these words that I always had to look up because I never heard of them before. He said that psalms were written in a chiastic structure. That means it follows an A, B, C, B, A structure. Or A, B, C, D, 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 C, C. It was that kind of a structure. Each verse was written in a doublet, repeating what was in the first half of the verse, but reversing its contents and saying it in a slightly different way, maybe enhanced way in the second. There's always a comma in every verse of Psalms. And that indicates the middle, not geometrically, but the middle of the verse. And it employs what he called parallelism. All Psalms and ancient texts were written in this way. The first half would be identical to the second half, but the second half would say it either backwards or use different words to enhance what was in the first half. But the entire psalm was written chiastically. So that means the pyramid peaked in the center. The essence of a psalm was somewhere in the middle of the psalm. And that was very interesting to me. He said, he always asks us what the essence of a psalm is. He says, look in the middle. Look in the middle. That's where you're going to find out what the psalm means. And I asked him if that was just a feature of Psalms or if it extended to books or a series of books. He said that in biblical literature, the crux of the book or its climax was not at the end as in Western literature, but in the middle. And that's why we call it the central idea of the story was in the center. When it came to the 5 books of Moses, the middle book was the book of Leviticus. The middle of the book of Leviticus was in our portion that we read this week, Acharei Mot. And what is the story being told in our portion this week? The Yom Kippur ritual of the 2 goats and the Kohanim or high priest and his singular task on this singular day of the year. This moment is so important in Jewish lore that it is detailed in our Yom Kippur liturgy in a service known as the Agudath, which we read at Musaf on Yom Kippur afternoon. For those of you that check out of Yom Kippur, before we get to this seminal teaching, and that's mostly everyone, let me detail the ceremony in broad strokes. The Kohen Gadol, or high priest, was to take 2 goats, designating one for God and the other for Azazel. Azazel is, biblical scholars say it was a goat demon that existed in the wilds that people prayed to. So, but it's not said that, it doesn't say that in the Bible. It just says that we have one goat designated for God and the other for this creature called Azazel. And it was to be released into the wilderness, the goat, taking all of our sins with it. This is similar to what we do in Rosh Hashanah at Tashlich, ridding our sins represented by crumbs of bread given to the fish. The other goat is sacrificed, and the blood of the goat is taken by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, into what's called the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies. to be dashed about, absolving the Israelites of their sins by cleansing the temple. The Holy of Holies is the place in the temple where the Ark of the Covenant, is located, and is closed to the public and all the other priests every day of the year. No one can go in there, okay? But on this one day of the year, on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, and only him, enters this sacred sanctuary to perform a very private ritual. So that's really interesting, right? This Ark of the Covenant that is described in great detail, with this cover, with these two creatures with wings that are facing each other, and inside the Ark of the Covenant is the tablets of stone that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai, and the broken stones as well. But nobody could see it. It was behind this curtain in the temple, hidden from everyone, except for one person, one day a year. So on the holiest day of the year, in the holiest place of Judaism, one man goes into a place no one is allowed and performs a ritual that no one can observe, yet absolves Israelites of their past year's sins. He is not completely alone, however. The Israelites are standing right outside of the Mishkan, or temple, waiting for him to return to them unharmed to report on the success of his mission. In fact, the high priest had to wear little bells on his on the hem of his cloak, and as long as the Israelites could hear the little tinkle of the bell, they knew he was alive. And if they didn't, they know he was dead, and he actually had a rope around him so they could pull him out, with another priest in the wait, ready to perform the ritual instead of him. So whenever I read about this singular issue right in the middle of Leviticus, the middle book of the Torah, I think of Dr. Lieber's message. The essence of the Torah is right here. I immediately think, because I love liturgy, I love to think about liturgy, and what is in the middle of our liturgy? The Amidah, one of the two most important prayers outside of the Shema. The Amidah is said silently. On Friday nights, we say it silently. During the day, it is recited silently and then repeated. But the Amidah is basically said silently by ourselves while surrounded by other congregants as we retreat to a private place of communion with God, just like the high priest did on that one holy day of the year. But we get to do it 3 times a day and every day of the year. I first wrote this when we were isolating ourselves during COVID, and I isolate myself. I quarantine myself. I lift my talit over my head. I'm sure most of you have seen me do this. I do this to remove distraction while I have a private moment with Hashem, with God. It is my time to meditate and to search myself for what really motivates me, to detail how grateful I am for each day of life, and to pray for others, whether they be physically or spiritually ill. We don't have priests anymore to take our sacrifices. We only have ourselves. We are all responsible for making changes, incremental changes in our character to remove bad traits and try to make amends for our mistakes. So during this time of the coronavirus, where we were all forced into isolation from each other, what do we do in that isolation? Were we depressed? Yeah, we were. Were we separate from the community? Or do we make good use of the time God has given us to keep connections with each other. Thank God we had online services, because it really did keep us connected with each other for about 3 years. I was in the hallway for over a year. I had set up, if you notice online, the pre-screen is the stained glass windows that are in the hallway, because that's where I was. That was my background for over a year when I did services. And there was nobody else in the building for about 3 years. We came out of the pandemic, then we went back into the pandemic. And eventually I migrated to the big sanctuary and then back to here. And then we started inviting people back. But during that entire time, it was like the Amidah, right? I was by myself, isolated, but yet we had people online that was joining us. So when I put my talit over my head, I really am isolating myself. I'm going back into that that quarantine that we all put ourselves in. But I'm reassured by the fact we used to have about 45 or 50 connections during the pandemic. So I knew that there was a good 60 or 70 people that were joining me. And it really, it saved me, okay, because that not having anyone in a sanctuary is kind of jarring, you know. It took me a while to really get used to it. But after a while, it was just like, well, I know everyone's out there. I can see the comments. You know, I used to have my all my stuff up here so I could see every screen. But here we are. We're struggling to come back. Not everybody has made it back. Everybody kind of got comfortable being at home, coming in services online. But I really would encourage everyone that's at home, if you're within driving distance, to come join us on Friday night and Saturday morning. There is nothing like seeing people for real, being within each other's presence, rather than that little Zoom 2-inch by 2-inch little screen. There is nothing like being within each other's presence. Okay, we had over 60 people that came in person for our congregational Seder this year. 60 people. It was amazing. And it was so alive. And I know people liked it because I was ready to go home and nobody was ready to go home. Everybody just wanted to talk. And it was great, you know. So there is nothing that beats in person. Okay? If you can't, I understand. And we have people that are coming in from outside of Montgomery. In fact, we have people outside of the state of Alabama that are joining us, and we used to have two out of the country too. We had somebody in Mexico and somebody in Brazil that came and did services with us. And I'm really happy that we can provide a service for all of those that are homebound, all of those that are outside of Montgomery, that look for a place of communion with each other. So, so when you daven the Amidah, which we're going to do in a few moments, think about yourselves and what it is that you would like to take home from the service. Okay? Do we just come and say the words and then go home and nothing matters? Or do we take something from this service home and resolve to make an incremental change in each and every one of us. That's what prayer is supposed to do, is make, the Hebrew word for prayer is lahit palel, okay? The root, pei lamed lamed, means to judge or to examine. The word lahit palel is a reflexive verb. So to pray means to examine or to judge oneself, not others, ourselves, and to make that incremental change. What are we judging ourselves? Because maybe we didn't have such a great week. Maybe we raised our voice to someone when we shouldn't have. Maybe we said something that hurt someone else's feelings. And this is a time for us to reflect on that. The Amidah is a time for us to reflect on ourselves, not other people, ourselves. So, Shabbat Shalom, welcome, and we will continue with Ma'ariv, page 39a. Please rise for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzevaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. U'mahavir yom u'mevi lail, u'mavdil ben yom u'vein lail, Adonai Tzevaot shemo el chai v'kayim tamid yimlo cholenu lamvoed. Baruch atah Adonai amariv aravim. Page 40. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amchavta Torah mitzvot chukim mishpatim otanu limadita al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachvenu v'kumenu nesiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam voed ki em chayenu v'orech yameinu uvohem menege yomam v'layla v'yavetecha tasi mimenu la'olamin. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ho'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinanatam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shachpecha v'kumecha ukshartam niot al yadecha v'ayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtav dam nam zot beitecha uv'isharecha v'haya'im shemo tishma'u el mitzvotai. למען ירבו ימיכם וימי בניכם האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לבתיכם לתת להם כי מהשמיים הארץ. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit al kanfei vignehem ladoratam v'natnu al tzitzit takana petil tchelet v'yalachem letzitzit oritem oto uskartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam V'lo tatu racharei levavchem v'yacharei nechem asher tem zonim achareihem leman tizgaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kadoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etechem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet, page 43a. This is our enduring affirmation, binding on us that Adonai is our God and there is none other. And we, Israel, are God's people. God is our sovereign, redeeming us from earthly rulers, delivering us from the hand of all tyrants, bringing judgment upon all our oppressors, and just retribution upon all our mortal enemies, performing wonders beyond understanding and marvels beyond all reckoning. God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, and leads us past the false altars of our enemies, exalting us above all those who hate us. Adonai avenged us with miracles before Pharaoh offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. God brought Israel from its midst to lasting freedom and led them through the divided water of the Sea of Reeds. As their pursuers and enemies drowned in the depths, God's children beheld the power of the divine. They praised and acknowledged God's name. Page 44. U'malchuto b'ratzon kibalea Moshe Urmiyam u'vnei Eschalach neshira b'simcha rabba v'yameru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedor ba'kodesh noratilot o seifele malchutecha ra'u v'necha bokiyam lifnei Moshe zeli anu v'yameru Adonai imloch le'olam voed v'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov v'golod chazak mimenu baruch et Adonai ga'al Yisrael. Page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu b'shalom. Ushmotzeitenu ve'en l'chaim u'shalom yatav yad olam u'fa'osen l'nuskat shalamecha baruch et Adonai ha'pochet sukat shalom aleinu v'yal kol amo Yisrael v'yal Yerushalayim. We rise, page 46, for Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam barit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam barit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam barit olam. Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledoratam barit olam. We now continue on page 47 with the silent Amidah. So retreat into your personal Kodesh Kodeshim, Holy of Holies, and reflect on your own lives, and determine what it is that you need to incrementally change. 47 through 52. And let us remain standing as we turn to page 56, and the ark is open for Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol atet gedula liotzer breshit shalo asanu k'guyei haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishmachot hadama shalo sam chilkenu kahem v'gor aleinu b'chol hamonam v'anachnu korim v'mishtachavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שעונתי שמיים ליוסד הארץ ומושב יקרה בשמיים עמהו ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשיבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד על כן ככתוב בתורתך אדוני מלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר Haya Adonai Lamelech al kol haaretz. Bayom Mahu, Yeh Adonai Echad, Ushamo Echad. You may be seated. This week we will observe yard sites for Waldemar Ferreira Soers, Simon Schulman, Catherine Hannon, Fanny Ackerberg-Kilberg, Isaac Siegel, Isaac Alhadeff, Mary Kamras Berman, Leon J. Hassan, Sarah Emanuel, Arnold Fest, Judy Mayer, F. Ray Sharker, Sam Norman Schinbaum, Perry Mendel, Samuel Zacudo, Cindy Cohen, Claire Evans, Jacob Horn, Helen Leibovitz, and Ida Siegel Rosenblum. Those observing yard site and those who mourn, please rise and join me, page 58, with the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirutei, v'yamlech malchutei, b'chayichon v'yamechon, v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalav izman kariv yimaru amen, yehi shmei Rabbah nevarach le'olam u'mel maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha barichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yoma v'yimaru amen yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen oseh shalom b'imramav uyaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you once again for joining us for Kabbalat Shabbat. Services will continue tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. We will celebrate the end of Shabbat tomorrow evening at 7:30 via Zoom with the Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah. It's May, so that means we have been meeting since May of 2020 with this Havdalah group. It's hard to believe, 4 years. And I don't think we've missed any Havdalah at all. Sunday, we have the last day of religious school here at Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem at 9:30 a.m. I will be in Mobile on Sunday evening. The Gulf Coast Holocaust Education Center is having their yearly memorial. They asked me to do the keynote, so I'll be in Mobile on Sunday. On Tuesday morning, the Alabama Holocaust Commission we have organized a Yom HaShoah Memorial, as we do every year. It's the Alabama State Holocaust Memorial. And this year, it will be at the Alabama Department of Archives and History. It'll be 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. I encourage all members, all Jews in Montgomery to come to this event. It's really important that we all show support for this event that takes place every year. It used to be at the Capitol. Now we're at the Archives. Much better auditorium. Governor Ivey will be speaking. We have several legislators that will be speaking, including Phil Ensler. Our keynote this year will be by Ann Mullengarten, who comes from the Alabama Holocaust Education Center in Birmingham. So it should be, and there's lunch afterwards, so you can't pass that up. And Wednesday, the Jewish Federation of Central Alabama will be having their annual Israel Independence Day Festival. There will be a dinner at Temple Beth Or. What time is that? 5:30, thank you. Thank you. We didn't put it in our bulletin for some reason. Thank you, though. That's great. Oh, it says it right here. That's right. And we're supposed to RSVP. I guess I haven't done that yet. Anyway, that's Wednesday. So a lot of things going on this time of year. Try to attend what you're able to attend. So we will go ahead and conclude our service, page 211, with Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem ko yitzir nivra liyet nasa v'chefso ko azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'yacharei kichlot hakol livado yimloch nara Adon Olam v'hu aya v'hu oveh v'hu yeh b'tifara Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liyet nasa v'chefso kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'hu echad v'yein sheni L'ham shelo lahachbira Adon Olam beli reshit beli tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'ham nisra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liyet nasa v'chefso kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzorchav li b'yetz Adon Olam v'hu nisi umanos li minat kosi b'yom mikra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liyet nasa v'chefso kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam biyado afkid ruchi b'yet tishan v'yayira Adon Olam ve'im aruchi geviyati Adon Ali v'lo ira Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liyet nasa v'chefso kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam. Shabbat shalom.